Okay, it's now being recorded, it seems. Can you hear me, folks? Excellent. Let's move forward. I am so sorry for the delay. Let's move forward, and we'll get done probably about 11:30. Um, welcome, welcome. Gosh, it's amazing. Acceptance and patience are such powerful tools in my repertoire today, and I hope it's in yours as well. We're going to talk about stabilization and breaking the pattern of isolation. And I really look forward to offering this because, again, we're all learners, doers, and teachers. And in my role as a recovery coach, the information that I'm going to share over the next 20 plus slides or so is not information that's telling people what to do relative to breaking the pattern of isolation. Because I think, when we meet people where they're at, when we pay attention with heart and meaning for individuals, we are responsible for, I think, for offering them strategies and tools and sometimes skills to be able to do this. So as you follow along with these slides, appreciate the fact that these are slides that I share with people that I work with recoverees. And this is information that I utilize to educate. I don't know about you, but I do a lot of education. And for me, the education part is an opportunity for recoverees to gain the information that's helpful for them to make progress in their process. We learn, we do, we teach. Along with that process of learning, doing, and teaching is that we learn it, we live it, and we lead it. And in my role as a recovery coach, I lead it. I lead a process. I partner in a process with another human being to move along and improve the quality of their life and to improve their own well-being. And yet in that process, as they learn what they learn, they develop their own art of recovery, just as you are here to develop your own art of coaching recovery. So with that in mind, let's move on. So again, here's a person breaking through a wall. Breaking that pattern of isolation is like breaking through a wall. For many of it's just like breaking through a prison. And so the next step I want to show you is a piece that I developed years ago in my role as a social worker. You see down in the left-hand corner, this is Soul Help. Soul stands for Strengths Offering, Operating, Uncovering Love and Lessons, or Soul more recently is Strengths Overcoming Unmanageability and Limitation. Help is my humble effort to learn and live and lead power. And that's been my own process during the 40 years of my own long-term recovery process. So when you look at this is a wall of denial. And in building this and in doing this wall, I probably did it probably about 20 years ago. And again, it's my humble effort to share information with people I'm trying to help. Great. Thank you for saying it as long as you did. The wall of denial looks at the mortar are the beliefs that people have when they set up this wall of denial. The bricks are the behaviors that are related to that wall of denial. And the foundation are the feelings that fuel and build the wall. In active addiction, the foundation and the feelings are fear, anger, false pride, pain, shame, guilt, inadequacy, low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, envy, self-pity. When we're focusing on today, loneliness, and I don't care attitude and confusion. The mortar or the beliefs that build this wall are people should act the way I think is right. I'm responsible for making everyone else happy. I must be in control. Threatening solutions have to keep me worried. Bad experiences of my childhood still control my life. Making mistakes is terrible. People should be condemned for their wrongdoings, and my emotions can't be controlled. And the behaviors that are created as a result of these beliefs and these feelings are manipulating, violating, disrespecting, attacking, rejecting, defending, stuffing feelings, obsessing. The one we're looking at again today is isolating and disconnecting, avoiding, escaping, which is another part of what we're looking at today, blaming, controlling, denying, caretaking, i.e. taking care of other people better than we take care of ourselves, people pleasing, reacting, lying, and dishonesty. Look at that wall of denial. Look at those beliefs, which are the mortar, those bricks, which are the behaviors that are exhibited in this wall of denial, and the feelings that fuel and build the foundation for the wall. I don't know about you folks, but some of those are still a part of who I am. You know, even as I progress over 40 years of recovery, there are still pieces of this wall of denial that must be broken through. And when we talk about breaking the pattern of isolation, it is so much about getting over denial. Isolating, disconnecting, avoiding, and escaping are the key concepts that we're looking at today as we talk about breaking the pattern of isolation, which is so fueled by this wall of denial. So when we talk about denial is don't even notice I am limited. Or denial is don't even notice I am lying. The limitations are don't even notice I am limited in my ability to live life well, my ability to live life as a social being, my ability to be in an environment and feel comfortable in that environment. Those are all pieces that have been a part of my own wall of denial. And they come for various reasons. And those various reasons can range from being a human being in a world that doesn't accept the color of my skin or doesn't accept me as a human being, or just the own stress that I put on myself, feeling the need to be perfect, and on and on and on. So when you look at this whole concept of a design for change, if you look at that piece that says design for change, the lighten part, the yellow letters spell out, I can change. Not being known doesn't stop the truth from being truth. This comes from Richard Bach, one of my favorite authors. He wrote Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah. And it's a book that I quote a lot if you hang around me enough. These solutions help recovery. So don't even notice I am limited or don't even notice I am lying. The way to get over denial, G-O-D, is practicing acceptance. Practicing acceptance took place in my effort to get through the impatience and the frustration that I had with our late start. But practicing acceptance over time has helped me to appreciate the fact that I've got to accept the things I can't change. We had no power over the difficulties that were presented by technology, and so we move on. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems as stated in 12-step programs. Acceptance is getting over denial. And that comes from the process of accepting a loss that happens when we talk about losing a loved one or losing opportunities or losing a part of our lives. So again, don't even notice I am limited is a part of what happens when we build up the walls that we build up. Limitations of denial. This comes from a Recovery Coach Academy class that I did back in 2017. And we were talking about denial, and I wrote this out for the participants. Denial is don't even notice I am limited in my attention, limited in my courage, limited in my action, limited in my responsibility, limited in my accountability to myself and the people that I care about, limited in my commitment, limited in my willingness to change, limited in my awareness of how to change, and limited in my acceptance. Think about it in the context of, I shared this with recoverees. This is a part of the information that I offer to help them to learn how to practice a process of recovering. If folks don't know what they don't know about recovery, how do we expect them to change? How do we expect them to engage in a recovery process? If you don't know what you don't know about recovery and the concepts that you learn in developing and understanding the science of coaching recovery, as well as the science of recovery itself, how much value would you have? So again, I offer this to help us to think about the limitations of denial, because denial truly fueled my own isolation. When I think about isolation, I remember sitting in the third floor of my mother's house, getting drunk, all by myself. And I appreciated at some level the limits of my isolation, but I still was in denial relative to that isolation. And part of that denial was that I was sitting in that room all by myself, listening to Barbara Streisand sing, "People who need people." And yet I would not take the risk to go into the world and connect with other people. And that's the challenge that's offered in helping people to break the pattern of isolation. I can't say to another human being, go into the world and connect with other people, because there's so many fears that are part of that process. And many of those fears are generated by lessons we've learned in life and living, limitations that we've been exposed to and we've embraced. Again, many of the limitations that I've experienced over time have been the limitations offered by the hue of my skin. And I accepted those limitations until they put me in a position of isolating myself, not taking advantage of opportunities that I could have and should have, even with a Yale education, and even with a sense of self as being okay. So, again, we're offering opportunities for us to think about how we might help people to break the patterns of isolation, but appreciate the fact this isn't easy to do. Can it also be that when we are in the heart of addiction, we don't even notice we are living? We're not living, are we? I look at addiction as being evil. And if you look at the word evil, it's backward, it's live spelled backward. And another piece of that for me, Sharon, and thanks for sharing that perception. For me, I've over time, probably over the last couple of years, I'm asking people to think about the difference between living your life and leading your life. So many times when I was living my life, it was based upon expectations of others. So much of my addiction was fueled by what I call an outer reach for inner security. I wanted people to like me. I wanted to be accepted. And I learned that concept, that outer reach for inner security, from John Bradshaw's work on shame and addiction. Shame kept me isolated. Shame was different from guilt. Guilt says that I did wrong, and that was something that could be punished or something that could be changed as a result of changing behavior. Guilt says that I am wrong and there's something wrong with me. And I can remember saying to myself, how could anybody else love me or care about me when I didn't love or care about myself? And that really set up a pattern of isolation for me, big time. So yeah, we didn't notice that we were living, or we didn't notice that we were living backward, or we were living isolated. We were living without the connections that were critical to our ability to feel whole and alive and valuable and worthwhile. If we, part of living is paying attention to it as heart and meaning for us. That's a major part of taking care of ourselves. So if I don't even notice that I am living, I don't even notice that I'm not taking care of me. And we can still do that in our caretaker roles. We can still do that. We can take better care of other people and their lives than we do our own selves and our own lives. So again, think about the concept of helping recoveries as well as ourselves, appreciating limitation. So the curiosity that comes about is, what is a recovery coach's role in coaching and supporting the stabilization task of helping recoveries break the pattern of isolation, and I say thereby practicing socialization. And we'll talk a lot about socialization. For me, that's a strategy. For me, that's a skill that will help recoveries, that will help individuals, ourselves included, to practice socialization. So how might a recovery coach successfully perform the role of helping recoveries break the pattern of isolation is the question. This course will identify your role and responsibilities related to supporting recoveries and breaking the pattern of isolation. You'll learn about something called social optimization as a means of supporting recoveries and learning how to break the pattern of isolation, which is a stabilization activity. And stabilization is the first stage of recovery that we learn in the science of recovery, that we learn in Recovery Coach Academy. And this, we're going to learn to build the capacity to educate recoveries in developing socialization skills and techniques. We're building the capacity within ourselves to educate recoveries, to develop and pay attention to as heart and meaning for them. That's how we meet people where they're at. That's how we don't live the lives of recoveries or lead their lives for them. We help them to appreciate how they may lead their lives, and we encourage and we support and we educate them in that process. That's what learning, doing, teaching is about. That's what learning, living, and leading is about. That's how I become a role model as a recovery coach. I live what I'm teaching. We teach best what we most need to learn. And be open to the prospects of you may still have some things to learn about your own socialization skills, techniques, activities, and participation in life. Occupational science has taught me a lot about helping people to make adjustments and best live in their environments. When I went to the University of Connecticut School of Social Work in an effort to gain skills in order to better contribute to the field of recovery, I worked with a woman named Carol Germain, who was one of my professors, and she talked about the life model of social work practice. And the life model of social work practice speaks about you've got a person or an individual, and you've got an environment in which the individual or the person is trying to live and get their needs met. When you talk about recovery capital, and you're talking about individuals, recovery capital is both a human recovery capital that's within individuals and can be developed within individuals, but it's also capital that's in the human being's environment. So in many ways, a person in an environment can better adapt to, be a part of that environment as a result of human capital and recovery capital in the external environment. This piece on occupational science comes from the University of Southern California. I found it years ago, and it's very valuable in the work that I do. When you think about occupation, that's that top middle circle. Occupation are the tasks and activities that you do to live. It's not about work. Work is one of the tasks and the activities that we do to live. But when we're talking about recovery coaches, and when we're talking about recoveries, how many times have we suggested that they find helpful and productive ways to spend their time, especially when they've not gained work yet? That's what this speaks about. How do we help recoveries to occupy their time? When I look at the stabilization stage, I identify in that stage the various parts of that stage, the various components of the stage of stabilization are opportunities for activities and tasks that recoveries can engage in to increase and improve their performance. In that bottom circle in the middle there, performance are the actions that you take to live. When you talk about being a recovery coach, which is a role that we participate in, that we play, the ability to perform that role are the actions that you take in performing the role of recovery coach. The person, you think about how well is your body functioning? how well you think, learn, understand, and remember, how well you affect your spirituality, i.e., practice spirituality, how well your brain and your central nervous system are functioning, and how well you manage your emotions and thinking. That's what well-being is. Recovery is an opportunity to improve our well-being as well as our quality of life. Our well-being supports being happy, being healthy, and being successful. So when you look at this, folks, occupational science helps us to help recoveries, helps us to help ourselves as that individual, as that person, to think about what it is that improves my well-being. How well my body's functioning, how well I'm learning, thinking, and understanding and remembering, how well I'm affecting my spirit, how well my brain and my central nervous system are functioning, and how well I'm managing my emotions and thinking. These are things that we want recoveries to learn. These are things that we want to learn ourselves. We tap into resources that vault to help build recovery capital. Yes. And I'm saying, Nicole, that a key one of those resources is helping that person to look at themselves in their environments and how they are engaged with that environment. Because isn't that what recovery capital does a nice job of helping people make their best fit within their environment. I know I did it. Think about the times in your own challenges in living or your own stressors in living, how many times you felt that you did not fit in your world. You did not fit in your environment, or you did not fit in the situations that you're in. That's where the isolation can come in. When we look at the environment, it's about social support, it's about social and economic systems. Those are the intrinsic factors that our environments offer us. It's about culture and values. It's about the built environment and technology of the buildings. They're the technology, the technology like computers and the like, telephones. And it's our natural environment. So again, in talking about recovery capital, we're talking about how we can impact external, extrinsic, outside of recovery's selves, those environments and those resources that are critical to, at the bottom of the sheet there is the quality of life, their general well-being of a person in society. So, our ability to help people to perform tasks and activities in daily living improves their performance as a result of their ability to make their best fit with their environment, and their environment is necessary to offer them recovery capital and other supports that offer them their best opportunity to make the best fit possible so that they can survive. If that fit isn't there, expect a human being to isolate. That would happen to any of us. Person in recovery environment, a little expansion on this concept. When we talk about recovery-oriented systems of care, it's a model that shows us in the middle of that person, that individual, that recovery, or you, and the primary focus within that environment is faith, work or school, social support, which is a part of community life, a sense of belonging, family, housing, peer support, and for many of us, treatment and rehab gets us into that community. It's so easy to isolate if those white spheres are not a part of a person's process. It's easy to isolate within our housing. We can just get used to being at home. I found it easy to isolate in treatment and rehab because I didn't feel like I fit there either. So again, it's helping us to think about all the components that must come together when we talk about a person in a recovery environment from which they can easily isolate if the fit isn't a good one. If the fit is one that they don't feel well or connected within the environment. And again, they can build up that wall of denial that has them lying to themselves or experiencing the limitations. Again, I keep using the concept of race and racism because it's such an isolator. It's such a object of shaming people to the point that it's very difficult to be in the world if I'm constantly told that I'm not good enough or that there's something wrong with me as a result of who I am. We could talk about the same in the context of stigma. We can talk about the same in the context of handicaps and disabilities. We can talk about the same in the concept of being too old or being too young. Those are all ways that people can feel stigma, shame, and therefore isolate. This is just reminders of our roles, because we're talking about what role can we play in helping people to overcome the pattern of isolation. And as I looked at it, the recovery coach roles and functions, all of them apply in the work that we're looking to do. It's critical that we're motivators and cheerleaders, we're allies in confidence, we tell recoveries the truth, we help them to solve their problems, we help tell them the truth without blaming or judging, we become a resource broker to help them to hopefully engage in activities and occupations in their daily living that help them to better engage in environments that help to break the pattern of isolation. We can be a community organizer or a connector to services that are either there or help to develop the services that are critical. We can be an advocate. We can be a friend and a companion. We can be a role model and mentor, all in our roles as recovery coaches that I think lend to helping recoverees to break the pattern of isolation. These are all the skills that I want you to pay attention to. And this is a greater breakdown of those skills and those roles and those functions. Motivator and cheerleader, I believe in the capacity for change. I motivate, I encourage, I celebrate as a person takes it. I can remember 2 counselors when I was in the early stages of trying to stay sober and still doing my revolving door, because I had 40 to 50 hospitalizations in the 7.5 years that I drank before I really got it. We would be able to get a copy of the slides from this webinar. Oh, yes, as long as you have a subscription, you can get these slides. I mean, I make an effort, Kelly, to offer slides that, again, I use these slides with recoverees. You know, again, it's an opportunity for you to continue to learn and grow through these slides in your role as a recovery coach. But also, I think our ability to make sure that we're those role models and that we are practicing what we are preaching is also valuable in this process. And again, these are slides that I like to make very user-friendly. You know, for me, I believe that these webinars, their greatest value comes from your ability to take them and act on them and use them and make them your own. So these are the roles and these are the elements of those roles. As an ally and a confidant, we're truth tellers. We provide honest and helpful information. We offer suggestions. You know, I emphasize providing honest and helpful information. For me, that's where the education piece. If you're not doing it now, please make sure that you're doing what it says in the role model part. Offers your own life as an example of healthy living. You show how you walk the talk, and you provide stage-appropriate recovery information and education. That's what we're doing now. We're offering stage-appropriate recovery information and education based upon the stabilization stage of the stages of recovery. This is information that's not only helpful and valuable for the recovery, but for their families as well as their therapists and their counselors, if you think about it. As a resource broker, we provide linkages to the recovery community that may enhance the recovery's ability to isolate less. We can become an advocate in the recovery community to offer those opportunities and broaden those opportunities. We can become a community organizer that does the same. As a lifestyle consultant, I offer feedback on the recovery's lifestyle. For example, if they're isolating and staying to themselves, I'll ask them a question, how's that working for you? Well, I'm real lonely. Well, then it might help for you to take a risk. I was going to mention earlier those 2 counselors in my own early effort to stay sober through those 40 hospitalizations. They would sit me down in a room at least 2 or 3 times a week, and the basic message that they would give me, because I was isolating, I was just, you know, doing what I was told about, trying to be in this program. But beyond that, I was just still isolating when I got home. And they would tell me, and I'd say, and I share this with recoveries to this day, you got to take a risk. If you want it to work better for you, you've got to take a responsible risk to do that. As a lifestyle consultant, I help recoveries to focus on recovery and wellness and help discuss healthy choices, one of which is to participate in life as much as they possibly can. As a friend and a companion, as a peer-to-peer, that reduced power differential is demonstrated by me sharing with them my own challenges in overcoming isolation, my own challenges in feeling comfortable within my own skin, which was a critical part of me overcoming isolation. Thank you so much, Sinead, for offering Kelly that information. A prescription for addiction treatment and recovery support organizations, the quality of life in early recovery and beyond. This comes from a blog by William White that I read a couple of years ago. And this piece comes alive when we talk about what we're talking about today. We have a responsibility in helping recoveries to improve their well-being and their quality of life in early recovery and beyond. And one of the clear prescriptions that William White offers for doing that is that we educate recoveries, their family members, and their service professionals on the long-term stages of recovery and stage-specific recovery management strategies. That's what you're doing through this process and through this webinar and other webinars that we offer to you. It's about providing written material, videos, and podcasts to recoveries and families on the stages of recovery and tips on managing periods of physical, emotional, spiritual distress across the stages of recovery. That's helping recoveries and their families to learn how to better manage stress as well as tapping into recovery management skills. So I put that piece in there just to emphasize the importance of a commitment to learning, whether it be on the part of the recovery that you're working with, and most importantly on your part. If you must be committed to learning to be the best helper that you can be and to be the best that you can be in your own recovery process. Folks, I've been in recovery for over 40 years from my relationship with alcohol. And thank goodness, I'm appreciating the fact that I have to continue to learn how to recover, because now I'm a person who's living with heart failure, that many of the strategies and the skills and the lessons I learned in recovering from my relationship with alcohol have been helpful in my recovery and in my living with heart failure. And the key to that, and the key one of those, is acceptance. This is the most potent piece of this that I want to offer. I want you to think about socialization and optimizing socialization. This comes from a woman from Denmark, I believe, who talked about Erikson's 8 stages of psychosocial development as also stages of social optimization. In America, we spell the word optimization with a Z. In Denmark, they spell it with an S, so there's not a misspell. And when you look about the social optimization stages, they closely parallel Erik Erikson's 8 stages of human psychosocial development. Psychosocial means thinking and psychology as well as socialization. So when you think about socialization, either we're trusting or mistrusting, either we're autonomous, meaning we can live on our own, or we're full of shame and doubt. Either we initiate connection or we feel guilty about connection. Either we practice industry, i.e. we move forward, we have ideas and we follow through on those ideas, or we feel inferior, especially in a school setting. In adolescence, we practice an identity, which is the whole concept of who am I, or we have role confusion. We don't know who we are, and especially in social relationships. And again, in social relationships, we can practice intimacy or we practice isolation in social relationships and even in more intimate relationships. Either intimacy, which is into me, you see, or isolation. So when you think of between adolescence and young adulthood is when identity or role confusion, intimacy or isolation takes place. That's where many of us got stuck. Many of us got stuck in adolescence. Many recoverees get stuck in adolescence, where there's a sense of, I don't know who I am. I don't know my role in the world. I don't know how I fit in the world. And that makes it very difficult to be intimate, to be connected, to not isolate. Generativity versus stagnation. I'm in the generativity stage now. That's the older adult stage, where generativity is about giving back. It's about sharing care. It's about teaching what I've learned. When if I don't do that, I feel stagnant. I felt such stagnation when I wasn't able to do the work that I so loved doing as a result of my hospitalization for heart failure. And now that I'm starting to get back in the saddle, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling that I'm able to share the things that I've learned. And that's so important for me because that's clearly a part of my heart's desire. Then in the older adult stages, we practice ego integrity, which means we are who we say we are, or if we don't practice who we say we are, we feel despair. A little bit closer look at these social optimization stages that closely parallel Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. Let's look at a further look at these. Erikson's psychosocial development was adapted for social optimization stages by this woman called Heidi Forbes Oste in 2013. And she quotes, "In the context of my work, providing a definition as the building and maintaining of mutually beneficial and effective relationships suffice," meaning that it worked. In 2009, she coined the term social optimization. Social optimization is dependent on the interaction with others. Together we care one and many, and therefore are better off. We are who we are together. So when she talks about social optimization, she speaks to what is critical for recovery to build and maintain mutually beneficial and effective relationships, and challenge and support recoverees to take the risk to do so. So looking at those psychosocial development stages that are adapted for social optimization, trust versus mistrust. And this is, again, information that I have conversations that matter with recoverees. As we look at this information, I'm able to ask good questions that get them to think about these concepts. I actively listen to hear what they're getting and what they're questioning and what they're thinking. And so, again, I offer you an opportunity to engage in conversations that matter with recoverees to help them to think about, okay, how many times a recovery says, I don't trust? And so we help them to think about developing a sense of trust when interactions provide reliability, care, and affection. When my relationships are reliable, when I feel as if people care about me and they demonstrate affection, it's easier to develop a sense of trust. It's hard to do that when there's a sense of mistrust. And actually the inability to have those positive interactions can lead to mistrust. Autonomy versus shame or doubt. We develop a sense of personal control over our physical skills and a sense of independence. That's what autonomy is about. Success in being autonomous leads to feelings of autonomy, i.e., I feel like I have control over my life and my physical skills, and I have a sense of independence. Failure results in feelings of shame and doubt. And how many is it? Shame and doubt can be experienced at 2 or 3 years old. Think about that. just as trust or mistrust happens at 1 or 2 years old. Initiative versus guilt. We begin asserting control and power over our environment as a part of our initiative. Success in the stage of initiative leads to a sense of purpose. Those who exert too much power experience disapproval, resulting in a sense of guilt. When I abuse other people, when I make an effort to control what I have no responsibility or ability to control, I can experience disapproval, which gives me a sense of guilt. Industry versus inferiority. When I cope with new social and learning demands, is industry. Success in industry leads to a sense of competence. Failure results in a fear of inferiority. Identity versus role confusion. This tends to happen in the stage of adolescence and beyond. There are those of us who can be 45 or 50 years old and still struggle with this identity versus role confusion part of adolescence. We develop a sense of self and personal identity. Who I am. The first exercise of Recovery Coach Academy comes into play here. Success leads to an ability to stay true to oneself, i.e. a successful identity identification, or failure leads to role confusion and a weak sense of self. Intimacy versus isolation. The need to form intimate, caring relationships with other people is critical to our personal growth and our social optimization. Success in developing intimacy leads to stronger relationships. Failure results in loneliness and isolation. So the failure to develop intimacy is why I isolated. The failure to allow people to see into me you see, put me into loneliness and isolation. Generativity versus stagnation. Again, I'm in the generativity stage. It's a need to create or nurture things that will outlast me. It's often by having mentees, recoveries, or sponsees, or creating positive change that benefits other people. Ego integrity versus despair is the need to look back and feel a sense of fulfillment. Having a success in this stage leads to a feeling of wisdom. Failure in this stage results in regret, bitterness, and despair. So again, Erickson's psychosocial development coupled with social optimization is a very powerful learning for us as well as recoverees to understand the importance of learning how to be a social being, learning how to socialize, because it's so critical to our success in living. Developing the art of building relationships, and we're talking about the importance of relationships, the importance of socialization. And again, folks, do not assume that people know how to do this. And do not assume that you know how to do this. This is a part of developing the art based upon a science that I gained through the White Bison and work done by the White Bison group. And what we practice: harmony, balance, justice, integrity. We focus on solutions. We focus on win-win. We become a love seeker versus a fault finder. We look at what's right with people, organizations, family, and relationships versus predicting negative or being negative. We have spiritual values that provide us with connection. We're honest, open-minded, and willing to care. We respect. We manage to care. We seek out and put care into our organizations, families, relationships. Forgiving is unconditional. There's a committed focus on others to see and discover the good in them. We help build collaborative and cooperative organizations, family, and health partnerships. And through this process of building relationships, we promote care and recovery. Again, I share this with recoverees and challenge them to identify how to build relationships and take risks to build relationships that begin to work better for them. I matters. Art, would you agree that intimacy builds trust and confrontation builds intimacy? I think intimacy builds trust And confrontation many times builds either guilt or shame. Therefore, when I think about the concept of confrontation, it's such a harsh term. And so I've taken the liberty to change that term to carefrontation. I care enough about you to share with you what might be information might be hard for you to grasp or accept. Carefrontation is an opportunity to tell the truth without blame or judgment. Yeah, I like carefrontation as well. Carefrontation is my effort to share with you and not blame or judge you in the process of sharing my perceptions, my beliefs, what I'm learning from and about you. I Matters speaks to who I am. I Matters speaks to building intimate relationships. It speaks to independence, individuality, intimacy, and integrity, which again are issues of adolescence. Independence is a basic human need to be somebody. And what fuels independence is a sense to become important and to gain freedom. When I lack a sense of independence, I have fear, failure, anger, anxiety, distrust, confusion, frustration, and I feel incompetent. I Matters of individuality. Individuality is a basic human need to be oneself. The activities to achieve individuality is to rebel and to challenge the norm. When I lack an ability to be an individual, I have pain, and that pain takes the form of feeling fragile, fearful, embarrassed, shame, anger, vulnerable, awkward, insecure. Intimacy is an I matter. It's a basic human need to feel like I belong. The behavior is to experience connection. I encourage recoverees to break their pattern of isolation so they can experience the connection that will build intimacy as well as independence. When I lack intimacy or that connection or that feeling like I belong, it's loneliness, rejection, alienation, fear, anxiety, disconnection. Integrity is an I matter. It's a basic human need to experience beyond myself. In many ways, integrity mirrors spirituality. The activities are our spiritual journey. Integrity speaks to I am who I say I am. I practice what I say I am. When I lack pain, when I don't practice integrity, and the pain is despair, guilt, depression, anger, helplessness, hopelessness, and worthlessness. When you look at that right-hand column of pain, that's what fuels a disconnection. That's what fuels a desire to isolate. I don't feel comfortable in my skin, and I don't feel comfortable in the environment. So again, helping recoveries to look at this information is helping recoveries to make choices about how they will respond, how they will occupy their time, and what behaviors they can demonstrate and exhibit and practice to begin to get out of that isolation. Gets back to that occupational science that we talked about. I occupy my time in a way that improves my performance to be a person living in an environment where my performance is optimized. Same goes for your role as a recovery coach. When you practice and occupy your time in learning, it improves your performance and allows you to be a person in the environment of a recovery's life that will optimize your performance. And it will optimize your well-being, your quality of life, as well as theirs. Again, this is a very valuable tool, occupational science. Occupations matter. Social occupations that matter are interdependence, a willingness to seek help from and give help to others, your housing situation, interaction with community and environment, psychological background comes into play, social networking, family and significant relationships, acceptance of others, and safety. When I ask recoveries to think about occupying themselves as social beings, these are some of the things I want them to practice. Practice makes better, not perfect. Thank you, Nicole. I love it as well. Spiritual occupations that matter in helping to break the pattern of isolation are helping recoveries to think about occupying their time. And again, it's about the recovery. It's not about me. We can have conversations that matter where I actively listen, am curious, and ask good questions based upon that curiosity on how they're going to practice these occupations that matter. And that occupations that matter relative to their spiritual selves is identifying how do I gain a sense of belonging and bonding? How do I gain a spiritual belief or religious belief system that works for me? How do I begin to achieve a sense that I have purpose and direction and meaning in my life? How do I gain a willingness to seek guidance? How do I respect diversity? How do I live a satisfying life and have positive, excuse the type of acceptance of my life? And what are my personal beliefs about various issues of my life? These are conversations that matter, that fuel good questions, that help recoveries to discover and uncover who they are. What this all leads to me is an appreciation of a concept called recovery. I got this off of an NA t-shirt years ago, and I love it, love it, love it, because it does speak about connection, Nicole. It does speak about recovery. It does speak about breaking the pattern of isolation. And what it says is, as long as the ties that bind us together are stronger than those that would tear us apart, all will be well. It's an encouragement to you. It's an encouragement to recoveries to learn how to be social beings because we need each other. Again, when I'm sitting in that room all by myself, listening to Barbra Streisand sing, people who need people are the luckiest people in the world. That's what I'm talking about. Recovery. We did it. Half an hour. We did it. It's 11:30. Thank you for hanging in with me, folks. I appreciate, despite the technical difficulties up front, I appreciate you hanging out with me. I really enjoyed presenting this because it was such a critical part of my own personal development, as well as a helper, as well as a helpee. So again, I hope this helps. I hope you'll take advantage of it. And thank you. I'm getting back in the world. I'm going to be meeting this afternoon about beginning to do some more work in the community centers here in Connecticut. I will continue to do these webinars and who knows what more. Thank you, folks. And thanks a lot, Sinead. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We did it.